The Galactic Council chamber hummed with the low vibrations of 1,000 different species, each contributing their own unique harmonics to the cacophony of interstellar politics. Ambassador Zexthara of the Vorthak Empire shifted her crystalline appendages nervously as she reviewed the data tablets floating before her. The news was grimmer than anything the galaxy had faced in over 3 millennia. The Devourers had returned. Across the vast circular chamber, representatives from every major civilization in the known galaxy gathered in emergency session. The towering Goliaths of Proxima Prime stood like living mountains, their rocky hides scarred from countless battles. The ethereal luminari flickered in and out of visible spectrum, their anxiety causing their natural bioluminescence to pulse erratically. Even the ancient cerebral collective, beings of pure thought housed in mechanical shells, seemed agitated as their optical sensors darted frantically between data streams. High Chancellor Mordun, a being whose species had transcended physical form eons ago, manifested as a shimmering hologram at the center of the chamber. His voice resonated through every translation matrix simultaneously, carrying with it the weight of absolute authority. Fellow beings of the galaxy, he began, his form flickering with barely contained energy, we face extinction. The Devourers have breached the void barrier. Our outer colonies fall silent one by one. Our most advanced fleets report the same thing before communications cease entirely. Nothing survives their approach. A collective shudder ran through the assembly. The Devourers were more than just another aggressive species. They were entropy made manifest, beings that existed solely to consume and destroy. They had last appeared during the Dark Epoch, when the galaxy was young and chaotic. It had taken the combined might of every civilization, technologies that were now lost to time, and sacrificed beyond measure to barely drive them back into the cosmic void between galaxies. What forces do we have at our disposal? Demanded General Crix of the Hegemony Defense Corps, his 4 arms gesturing emphatically as he spoke through his translator. Surely our combined fleets can? No, interrupted Dr. Velterra, the Luminari's chief xenobiologist, her form flickering with distress. You don't understand. The Devourers have evolved. Our preliminary scans show they've adapted to every weapon system we used against them previously. Quantum torpedoes pass through them harmlessly. Plasma cannons barely slow their advance. Even our most powerful antimatter charges seem to only feed their hunger. The chamber erupted in panicked discussions as species-specific languages overlapped in a chaotic symphony of fear. Through it all, Ambassador Zexthara found herself remembering something from the deep archives, something that had been dismissed as primitive superstition by the academic community. She raised a crystalline appendage, requesting permission to speak. The gesture sent prismatic light dancing across the chamber walls, drawing attention from the crowd. High Chancellor, she began, her synthetic voice carrying clearly through the din, I wish to propose something that may sound unconventional. Speak, Ambassador. We have little time for conventional thinking. Zexthara's form seemed to dim slightly, betraying her uncertainty. In the deep archives of my people, there are records from the last Devourer incursion. Most have been dismissed as mythology, but they speak of a species that fought alongside our ancestors. A species that the Devourers seemed to fear above all others. A dismissive growl emanated from the Goliath delegation. Myths and legends won't save us now, Crystal Singer. But High Chancellor Mordun's form pulsed with interest. Continue, Ambassador. What manner of beings were these mythical allies? They called themselves humans. The word fell strangely from her translation matrix, as if it were a concept her species' language wasn't designed to handle. The records described them as bipedal, carbon-based life forms from a small, insignificant world in the outer spiral arm. They possessed no advanced technology, no psychic abilities, no natural weapons or armor. By all accounts, they should have been among the first casualties. And yet, prompted the Chancellor, and yet the records suggest they turned the tide of entire battles through sheer determination and tactical unpredictability. The archives speak of humans who would sacrifice themselves to save others, who would fight impossible odds not for glory or survival, but for abstract concepts like hope and freedom. The Devourers, beings of pure logic and consumption, apparently couldn't comprehend such behavior. A long silence fell over the chamber. Finally, Counselor Thex of the Academic Alliance spoke, his tone dripping with skepticism. Even if such beings existed, which I doubt, that was 3,000 years ago. If they were real, they're certainly extinct by now. No primitive species survives that long without technological advancement. But Dr. Velterra's form was pulsing rapidly, indicating deep thought. Wait, she said, her voice cutting through the murmurs. The galactic surveys, there have been reports of a species matching that description. Bipedal carbon-based life forms from the outer rim. Most survey teams dismissed them as too primitive to warrant formal contact protocols. The chamber fell silent again, but this time the silence held a different quality, the electric tension of possibility. Where? Demanded the Chancellor. Sol system, Velterra replied, consulting her databanks. Third planet from their star. They call it Earth in their dominant languages. Last survey was approximately 50 standard cycles ago. The team reported a pre-industrial civilization showing signs of rapid development, but nothing that would suggest galactic-level capability. General Crix's forearms crossed skeptically. You're suggesting we pin our hopes on primitives who've barely discovered fire? Not primitives, Zexthara corrected, her form brightening as excitement overcame her uncertainty. According to the mythology, they weren't advanced. They were something else entirely. They possessed what the archives call adaptive violence potential and sacrifice-based tactical innovation. The record suggests they could find ways to kill anything, no matter how superior the opponent. High Chancellor Mordun's form flickered rapidly, processing the implications. How long until the Devourers reach the core systems? 6 months, perhaps 7, reported the Intelligence Collective, their mechanical voices synthesizing in perfect harmony. And how long to reach this Sol system? 3 weeks by our fastest scout ships. The Chancellor's decision was immediate. Dispatch a diplomatic mission. Full authorization to establish contact and assess capabilities. If there's even a remote possibility that these humans could provide an advantage. Sir, interrupted Counselor Thex, his form quivering with indignation, you can't seriously be considering allying with primitives based on ancient mythology. I'm considering, the Chancellor replied, his voice carrying undertones that silenced all protest. Every available option when extinction is the alternative. The mission launches within the hour. As the Council dispersed into frantic preparation, Zexthara found herself assigned to the diplomatic mission along with Dr. Velterra and a small military escort. As she made her way to the docking bays, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were either about to discover the galaxy's salvation or waste precious time chasing ghosts from the distant past. The ship that would carry them to Sol System was a marvel of luminary engineering, capable of traveling vast distances through controlled space-time manipulation. As they prepared for departure, the crew received constant updates from the Outer Rim. The news grew worse with each transmission. Colony ship Prosperity. They're here. God help us, there. Signal terminated. Defense platform Omega-7. Conventional weapons useless. They're adapting faster than we can. Signal terminated. Battle Group Titan. Entire fleet consumed in minutes. Whatever these things are now, they're not what our ancestors fought. There. Signal terminated. As their ship engaged its space-folding drives and reality warped around them, Zexthara found herself praying to whatever cosmic forces might listen that the humans of Sol 3 had evolved into something capable of facing an enemy that consumed starships like plankton. 3 weeks later, as they emerged from fold space at the edge of the Sol system, their sensors immediately detected something that made the entire diplomatic team exchange uncertain glances. The system was filled with artificial structures, satellites, space stations, and what appeared to be primitive fusion drive spacecraft moving between the planets. Impossible, whispered Dr. Velterra, her form flickering with confusion. The survey reports indicated pre-industrial development. This represents at least 2 centuries of advancement compressed into 50 standard cycles. But it was General Crix who voiced what they were all thinking. Either our surveys were completely wrong, or these humans develop at a rate that defies every known biological law. Their ship's communication array crackled to life, receiving a transmission from the third planet. The message came in multiple frequencies and languages, but one stood out, a clear, structured communication in what their translation matrices identified as the dominant Earth language, English. Unknown vessel, this is Terra Defense Command. You have entered restricted space. State your identity and purpose, or you will be considered hostile. Ambassador Zexthera activated the communication array, her diplomatic training taking over despite her nervousness. Greetings, beings of Soul 3. We are representatives of the Galactic Council, seeking to establish first contact and discuss matters of mutual benefit. We come in peace. A pause. Then, Galactic Council? Well, I'll be damned. Stand by for escort to Luna Station. And, welcome to the neighborhood. As small fusion drive craft approached their vessel, Zexthera realized that everything they thought they knew about the galaxy was about to change. The humans weren't just real, they were spacefaring. And, if the ancient records were even partially accurate, that meant hope for the galaxy might not be as mythical as everyone believed. The escort vessels were crude by galactic standards, but they moved with precision and purpose that spoke of military discipline. As they approached what the humans called Luna Station, a massive orbital facility around Earth's natural satellite, the diplomatic team got their first clear view of humanity's home system. It was nothing like the peaceful backwater described in the survey reports. Space traffic moved constantly between the planets. Massive mining operations carved resources from asteroids. Most surprisingly, weapons platforms defended key positions throughout the system. Not primitive weapons, but recognizable energy cannons and missile systems that, while technologically inferior to galactic standard, showed clear military thinking. They're preparing for war, observed General Crix with professional appreciation. Look at those defensive positions. Overlapping fields of fire, redundant communication networks, fallback positions. These aren't primitives playing with dangerous toys. This is strategic thinking. Dr. Velterra's readings were equally intriguing. Genetic scans show incredible diversity within the species. They appear to have multiple subspecies that have somehow achieved peaceful coexistence. And their developmental rate, it's unprecedented. Biological analysis suggests they've advanced more in the last century than most species achieve in millennia. As they docked with Luna Station, Zexthera felt a mixture of anticipation and dread. If the humans were real, if the ancient records contained even a grain of truth, then perhaps the galaxy stood a chance against the Devourers. But first, they would have to convince a species that had never encountered alien life to join a war against beings that consumed entire star systems. The airlock cycled, and Ambassador Zexthera got her first look at a human being. The creature stood upright on two legs, covered in what appeared to be artificial materials rather than natural hide or carapace. Its face was remarkably expressive, capable of conveying complex emotions through minute muscle movements. But it was the eyes that struck her most, alert, intelligent, and utterly fearless despite facing alien beings for the first time in their species' history. "Welcome to Luna Station," the human said, its voice carrying warmth that the translation matrix somehow managed to preserve. "I'm Admiral Sarah Chun, Terra Defense Command. I understand you have quite a story to tell us." As they followed the Admiral deeper into the station, Zexthera noticed details that confirmed her growing hope. Human personnel moved with efficient purpose. Their technology was elegantly designed despite its relative simplicity, and, most importantly, they showed no fear of the unknown, only curious interest and alert readiness. Perhaps, she thought, the myths were about to become reality. And perhaps, just perhaps, the galaxy was about to meet its salvation in the most unlikely form possible. A species of curious, stubborn, impossibly adaptable bipeds who viewed the impossible as merely another problem to be solved. The war against the Devourers was about to gain its most dangerous ally. Admiral Sarah Chun led the alien delegation through the corridors of Luna Station, her mind racing with possibilities she had never imagined during her 30-year military career. The briefing room she selected overlooked Earth, its blue-white marble suspended in the cosmic void, a reminder of what they were sworn to protect. "Before we begin," Admiral Chun said, gesturing for her guests to take positions around the holographic display table, "I need to know exactly what we're dealing with. Your message mentioned an urgent threat to the galaxy." Ambassador Zexthera's crystalline form caught the light from Earth's reflection, sending rainbow patterns across the room's walls. "Admiral, what I'm about to tell you will sound like something from your science fiction, but I assure you it's terrifyingly real." The holographic display activated, showing a three-dimensional map of the galaxy. Red markers appeared along the outer rim, spreading inward like a plague. Each marker represented a star system that had gone dark in the past 6 months. "We call them the Devourers," Zextara continued, her synthetic voice carrying undertones of ancient dread. They are beings of pure consumption, entropy given form and purpose. They don't conquer. They consume everything: matter, energy, even space-time itself. What they leave behind isn't ruins or wasteland. It's nothing. Complete void. Dr. Velterra stepped forward, her luminescent form pulsing with each word. 3,000 years ago, they nearly destroyed all life in the galaxy. It took the combined might of every civilization, technologies now lost to time, and sacrifices beyond counting to drive them back into the void between galaxies. Admiral Chen studied the display with a tactical mind honed by decades of warfare. Population of affected systems? Approximately 400 billion sentient beings, Zextara replied. Gone without a trace. The Admiral's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, but her voice remained steady. And you believe humanity can help? General Crix stepped forward, his forearms gesturing dismissively. With respect, Admiral, we're grasping at ancient myths. Our records suggest that during the last incursion, your species fought alongside our ancestors. But those records are fragmentary, possibly fictional. What kind of records? Asked Admiral Chun, her scientific curiosity overriding diplomatic protocol. Zextara accessed her data files, projecting ancient text across the holographic display. The symbols were alien, but the translation matrix converted them to English in real time. From the war chronicles of the Vorthak Empire, the humans arrive not with superior weapons or shields, but with minds that think as no enemy expects. They sacrifice themselves not for glory, but for strangers. They find weaknesses where none exist and create weapons from nothing. The Devourers, who consume all, cannot consume their will to fight. Another text appeared. From the Luminari archive. Watch a human die for a cause they believe in, and understand why the Devourers fear them. They do not fight to survive, they fight to win. Admiral Chun absorbed this information with characteristic military efficiency. Assuming these records are accurate, you're asking us to join a galactic war based on the performance of our ancestors 3 millennia ago. Not just asking, Dr. Velterra interjected, her form flickering with urgency. Begging. Our conventional forces are useless against them. They adapt to our weapons faster than we can deploy new ones. Our most advanced technologies only feed their hunger. The Admiral turned to her aide, Commander James Rodriguez, who had been silently recording the entire conversation. What's our current military status, Commander? Terra Defense Command has 600 vessels in active service, ranging from patrol craft to dreadnoughts. Mars has another 300 ships in various stages of construction. Total personnel across all services, approximately 2 million active duty. General Crix's expression, visible through his translator's emotional overlay, showed polite skepticism. Admiral, with respect to your species' achievements, our smallest battle groups contain 50,000 vessels. The combined galactic fleet numbers in the millions. And they're all useless against your enemy. Admiral Chun replied with characteristic human bluntness. You said so yourself. The room fell silent, except for the subtle hum of Luna Station's life support systems. Finally, Zextara spoke. Admiral, there's something else you need to understand. According to our survey records, your species was pre-industrial 50 years ago. Our sensors indicate you've advanced technologically at a rate that should be impossible. Admiral Chun smiled grimly. We've had motivation. After the Tunguska event in 1908, and especially after the radio signals from space we detected in 1947, humanity realized we weren't alone. We've been preparing for first contact ever since. Sometimes peacefully, sometimes not so much. She gestured to the display, which shifted to show human space infrastructure. Project Olympus has been building our defensive capabilities for decades. We've colonized Mars, established mining operations throughout the asteroid belt, and constructed defensive platforms around every inhabited world. We learned from human history that isolation is an invitation to conquest. Dr. Velterra's scans were detecting something unusual. Admiral, our instruments are reading energy signatures we don't recognize from your vessels and installations. That's not standard fusion technology. No, it's not. Admiral Chin's expression became carefully neutral. We've developed what we call quantum vacuum energy extraction. It's more efficient than antimatter and doesn't require exotic matter for fuel. The alien delegation exchanged glances. Quantum vacuum energy was theoretical even by galactic standards, the kind of breakthrough that took most species centuries to achieve. How? General Crix asked, his professional interest overcoming his skepticism. Necessity, replied Admiral Chun. When you know hostile contact is possible, you develop every advantage you can. We've also made advances in metallurgy, artificial intelligence, and what we call tactical adaptation systems, computer programs that can analyze enemy capabilities in real time and adjust our weapons accordingly. Commander Rodriguez stepped forward with a datapad. Admiral, we've just received priority communication from Earth Defense Command. They're requesting permission to brief our guests on Project Prometheus. Zexteron noticed the change in atmosphere immediately. Both humans suddenly became more formal, more alert. Project Prometheus? She inquired. Admiral Chun considered for a long moment. Commander, establish a secure communication link with General Morrison. Authorization Chun 77 Alpha. The holographic display shifted to show the stern face of an older human male wearing similar military insignia. General Morrison, Admiral Chun said formally, our guests need to understand what they're asking us to commit to. Permission to brief them on Prometheus? Granted, the general replied without hesitation. If we're going to war, they need to know what we're bringing to the fight. The display changed again, showing what appeared to be a massive space-based construction project hidden behind one of Jupiter's moons. The structure was enormous, easily the size of a small asteroid, and clearly designed for warfare. This is the Prometheus station, Admiral Chin explained. It's been under construction for 20 years. The project represents humanity's ultimate defensive capability. What does it do? Asked Dr. Valterra, her sensors struggling to analyze the massive structure. It manufactures and deploys what we call adaptive warfare platforms, Commander Rodriguez replied. Essentially, we can analyze any hostile technology and develop countermeasures within hours. The station can manufacture specialized weapons, defenses, or entire spacecraft designed to exploit specific enemy weaknesses. General Crix's 4 eyes widened with understanding. You've built a facility that can conduct technological evolution in real time. More than that, Admiral Chin said, her voice carrying pride and determination. We've built a facility that embodies human military philosophy. Any enemy can be defeated if you understand them well enough and are willing to pay the price for victory. Zexteroff felt something she hadn't experienced in decades. Hope. Admiral, would you be willing to demonstrate this technology? We already are. Admiral Chin smiled grimly. Our sensors have been scanning your ships since you entered the system. We now understand the basic principles of your space-folding drives, energy weapons, and defensive shields. If we had to, we could build crude versions of your technology within a week. The alien delegation stood in stunned silence. What Admiral Chan was describing was technological analysis and adaptation at a rate that should take decades, accomplished in mere hours. How many of these Prometheus stations do you have? Dr. Valterra asked. 3 operational, 2 more under construction, Commander Rodriguez replied. Each one can support a full battle fleet with adaptive technology. And your military doctrine? General Crix inquired with professional curiosity. Admiral Chin's expression became steel. Simple. Study the enemy. Find their weakness. Exploit it without mercy. If they adapt, we adapt faster. If they evolve, we evolve to counter them. And, if necessary, we sacrifice ourselves to protect others. She gestured to the display, showing Earth. Every human understands that some things are worth dying for. Freedom, justice, the right to exist. And when you're fighting for those principles, you don't fight to survive. You fight to win. Zexterar realized that the ancient records hadn't been mythology after all. They had been warnings. Warnings that the galaxy contained a species so adaptable, so relentlessly creative in warfare, so willing to sacrifice for abstract principles that even beings of pure consumption would find them incomprehensible. Admiral, she said formally, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I formally request humanity's assistance in the war against the Devourers. Admiral Chun looked at her staff, seeing the same determination reflected in their faces that she felt in her heart. Humanity had spent 70 years preparing for hostile first contact. They had built fleets, developed impossible technologies, and created military doctrines based on the assumption that the universe contained threats beyond imagination. Now those preparations will be tested. I'll need to consult with the United Earth government, Admiral Chun replied formally. But, speaking as a military officer, I can tell you this. Humanity has never backed down from a fight where innocent lives were at stake. We won't start now. General Morrison's image nodded approvingly from the communication link. Admiral Chin speaks for all of Terror Defense Command. Ambassador, if your devourers think they can consume the galaxy without consequence, they're about to learn why humans have a saying. Never corner something meaner than you are. As the alien delegation prepared to return to their ship to await humanity's official response, Zextarov felt certain that the galaxy was about to witness something unprecedented. The humans weren't just willing to fight. They were eager to prove themselves against the ultimate enemy. The Devourers had conquered every civilization they'd encountered by being unpredictable and adapting faster than their enemies could respond. They were about to meet a species that considered adaptation and unpredictability basic survival skills. And for the first time in 3,000 years, the galaxy had a chance. The emergency session of the United Earth government convened within 6 hours of the alien delegation's arrival, a speed that impressed even the galactic representatives waiting in orbit around Luna. In the Geneva Assembly Hall, representatives from every nation sat in tense discussion while holographic displays showed real-time updates from the galactic front lines. Secretary General Elena Vasquez stood at the central podium, her voice carrying the weight of a decision that would define humanity's place in the cosmos. Ladies and gentlemen, we face a choice that will echo through history. We can remain safely isolated while billions of sentient beings face extinction, or we can honor our highest ideals and stand against the darkness. The Brazilian delegate raised his hand. Madam Secretary General, what guarantee do we have that humanity can make a meaningful difference? Our entire military might is a fraction of what the aliens have already lost. Admiral Chun, attending virtually from Luna Station, responded with characteristic directness. Congressman Silva, conventional thinking suggests we should have no chance. But conventional thinking is why the galactic civilizations are losing. They fight like scientists, methodical, predictable, logical. The Devourers adapt to logic. They can't adapt to human unpredictability. The Russian representative leaned forward. Admiral, you're asking us to bet our species' survival on the hope that we think differently than other aliens. No, sir, Admiral Chun replied firmly. I'm asking us to bet our species' survival on the certainty that we've never met an enemy we couldn't find a way to kill. Dr. Patricia Hendricks from the Prometheus Project stepped forward with a datapad. If I may, Secretary General, our preliminary analysis of the Devourer technology, based on galactic sensor data, suggests several potential vulnerabilities. The assembly fell silent as she activated the holographic display. Three-dimensional models of the Devourer entities appeared, writhing masses of dark energy that seemed to consume light itself. The Devourers appear to be composed of exotic matter held together by quantum field manipulation, Dr. Hendricks explained. They consume normal matter by converting it into energy and incorporating that energy into their own quantum structure. It's elegant, efficient, and seemingly unstoppable. Seemingly, prompted the Secretary General. Every system has weaknesses, Dr. Hendricks replied with scientific confidence. Their quantum coherence requires specific harmonic frequencies to maintain structural integrity. Disrupt those frequencies, and they should theoretically undergo catastrophic decoherence. The Japanese delegate raised his hand. Dr. Hendricks, have the galactic civilizations attempted such disruption? No, sir. According to their technological assessments, they lack the computational power to calculate the necessary frequencies while under combat conditions. The quantum mathematics involved are extraordinarily complex. Admiral Chun smiled grimly. But we have the Prometheus Artificial Intelligence Network. 30 quantum computers linked in parallel, specifically designed for real-time combat analysis and adaptive technology development. General Morrison's image appeared on the display from Earth Defense Command. Ladies and gentlemen, I've just received confirmation that our Mars construction yards can convert their entire production capacity to military vessels within 30 days. We can field a fleet of 2,000 ships specifically designed to fight the Devourers. The German representative looked skeptical. General, the aliens' fleets number in the millions, and they're losing. What can 2,000 ships accomplish? Ma'am, General Morrison replied with quiet confidence. those 2,000 ships will be crewed by humans. That makes them the most dangerous weapons the galaxy has ever seen. Secretary General Vasquez called for a formal vote. The debate that followed would be analyzed by historians for centuries, not for its length, but for its brevity. When faced with the choice between safety and duty, between isolation and sacrifice, humanity's representatives chose with remarkable unanimity. The final vote, 187 in favor of military intervention, 8 against, 3 abstentions. As the assembly dispersed into frantic preparation, Admiral Chun returned to Luna Station to find the alien delegation waiting anxiously for humanity's decision. Ambassador Zextara's crystalline form brightened noticeably when the Admiral delivered the news. The United Earth government has authorized full military cooperation with the Galactic Council, Admiral Chun announced formally. We're prepared to deploy our entire fleet if necessary. Dr. Velterra's bioluminescent form pulsed rapidly with excitement. Admiral, this is unprecedented. No species has ever committed to galactic defense without formal membership in the Council. We're not doing it for membership, Admiral Chun replied simply. We're doing it because it's right. General Crix stepped forward with military maps displaying the current tactical situation. Admiral, our latest intelligence suggests the Devourers will reach the core systems within 5 months. Our combined fleets will make their final stand at the Nexus Point, a system of strategic importance where multiple hyperspace routes converge. The holographic display showed a massive star system with artificial structures that dwarfed anything in human space. Battle stations the size of moons orbited strategic positions, while fleets from dozens of species massed for the largest military action in galactic history. What's our timeline? Admiral Chun asked, already calculating logistics in her head. 3 weeks to reach the Nexus Point, Zextara replied. We can transport your fleet using our fastest ships. No, Admiral Chun interrupted. Our ships will travel under their own power. We'll need that time to implement the combat modifications Dr. Hendricks has designed. What she didn't mention was humanity's real reason for refusing transport. They wanted the galaxy to see human ships arriving under their own power, demonstrating that Earth's military capabilities were far beyond what anyone suspected. The journey to the Nexus Point became a rolling technological revolution. Human ships linked their Prometheus AI systems, creating a vast computational network that analyzed every piece of data about the Devourers. By the time they reached galactic space, each human vessel had been transformed into a specialized anti-Devourer weapon. The modifications were unlike anything galactic engineers had conceived. Human ships now carried quantum disruption cannons calibrated to specific harmonic frequencies. Their hulls were fitted with adaptive armor that could reconfigure its molecular structure in response to different types of attacks. Most importantly, their targeting systems were linked to AI networks that could calculate optimal attack vectors in real time. But it was the human crews that truly set these vessels apart. While galactic military doctrine emphasized overwhelming firepower and defensive formations, human tactics were built on mobility, creativity, and willingness to take calculated risks that other species considered suicidal. Captain Maria Santos of the heavy cruiser Indomitable demonstrated this perfectly during the fleet's passage through the Corvaxi system. When the ship's AI detected a Devourer scout, a massive entity that had consumed 3 Corvaxi patrol vessels, Captain Santos didn't call for reinforcements or retreat to safety. Instead, she ordered her ship to intercept. Target acquired, reported her tactical officer, Lieutenant Commander Zhang. Devourer entity, approximately 2 kilometers in diameter. Energy output suggests it's preparing to consume the Corvaxi research station. Time to station, Captain Santos asked, her voice calm despite facing an enemy that had destroyed entire star systems. 14 minutes at current consumption rate. Then we have 13 minutes to kill it. Captain Santos activated the ship's combat AI. Prometheus analyzed target and recommended attack pattern. The artificial intelligence responded within seconds. Target shows quantum field instability in 3 specific frequency ranges. Recommend synchronized quantum disruption bursts at coordinates uploading to weapons control. Load quantum disruption torpedoes, full spread, Captain Santos ordered. All hands, battle stations. The Indomitable accelerated toward the Devourer entity at speeds that pushed the limits of human engineering. The alien creature, sensing the approach, turned from its intended target and began moving to intercept the human ship. What followed would be recorded by Korvaxi sensors and transmitted throughout the galaxy as proof that the ancient legends were true. The Devourer launched tendrils of dark energy that should have consumed the human ship's shields in seconds. Instead, the Indomitable's adaptive armor reconfigured itself, deflecting the attacks and actually absorbing some of the energy to power its own weapons. The human ship didn't engage in a traditional energy weapon duel. Instead, it executed a complex series of attack runs, each one targeting specific quantum frequencies while using its superior maneuverability to avoid direct confrontation. The Devourer, accustomed to enemies that fought with overwhelming force, couldn't adapt to an opponent that refused to engage on its terms. Target showing structural instability, Lieutenant Commander Zhang reported as the ship completed its third attack run. Quantum coherence dropping below critical thresholds. Fourth attack run, maximum yield, Captain Santos ordered. Let's finish this. The final torpedo spread struck the Devourer entity at precisely calibrated frequencies, causing a cascade failure in its quantum structure. For the first time in recorded galactic history, a Devourer was destroyed by a single ship. The Korvaxi research station transmitted a message that would be repeated throughout human space. Unknown vessel, your actions have saved over 10,000 lives. We are forever in your debt. Captain Santos' response became part of human military legend. No debt necessary. This is what humans do. Word of the Indomitable's victory spread throughout the galaxy faster than news of defeats. For the first time in months, galactic civilization had reason for hope. The humans weren't just willing to fight. They were capable of winning. But the real test was yet to come. At the Nexus Point, the largest fleet in galactic history was assembling for what everyone knew would be the final battle. Millions of ships from hundreds of species, representing the combined military might of an entire galaxy, waited for the Devourer's inevitable approach. And in the midst of this vast armada, 2,000 human ships prepared to prove that sometimes the smallest force could make the biggest difference. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the Terra flagship Defiance, watching as alien vessels took their positions around the Nexus Point's massive defensive installations. Each ship represented a species' desperate hope for survival, the most advanced technology and bravest crews committed to this final stand. Admiral, her communications officer reported, we're receiving a transmission from High Chancellor Mordun. He's requesting our tactical assessment. Admiral Chun smiled grimly as she opened the communication channel. The High Chancellor's holographic form appeared on her bridge, flickering with barely contained energy. Admiral Chun, the Chancellor said formally, your reputation precedes you. The entire galaxy speaks of your victory at Korvaxi. One ship, one victory, Admiral Chun replied modestly. The real test is coming. Indeed it is, the Chancellor agreed. Our long-range sensors detect the main Devourer force, over 10,000 entities approaching through folded space. They'll arrive within hours. Admiral Chen absorbed this information with professional calm. 10,000 entities, each capable of consuming multiple star systems. It was the largest concentration of Devourers ever recorded. What's our tactical situation? She asked. Approximately 2 million ships in defensive formation around the Nexus Point. Every major species has contributed their finest vessels and crews. Admiral Chun studied the tactical display, showing the massive fleet formation. It was impressive and completely wrong for fighting the Devourers. High Chancellor, she said carefully, with respect, your current formation is designed to fight a conventional enemy. The Devourers aren't conventional. What do you recommend, Admiral? Admiral Chun activated her ship's tactical AI, which had been analyzing galactic military doctrine since their arrival. We recommend a complete reversal of standard tactics. Instead of mass formations, we need dispersed units. Instead of defensive positions, we need constant movement. And instead of overwhelming firepower, we need surgical precision. The Chancellor's form flickered with uncertainty. Admiral, you're suggesting we abandon military doctrine developed over millennia. I'm suggesting, Admiral Chun replied firmly, that you adopt tactics that have never failed humanity when faced with impossible odds. As the two leaders continued their discussion, sensors throughout the fleet began detecting the approaching Devourers. The enemy was arriving exactly as predicted, and they were larger, more numerous, and more powerful than any previous encounter. The final battle for the galaxy was about to begin, and Humanity was about to show the universe what they were truly capable of when everything they valued was at stake. The Nexus Point's sensor arrays detected the Devourer fleet's emergence from folded space with the precision of a cosmic clockwork. Across the galaxy's largest military formation, alarm klaxons sounded in 1,000 different tones as 2 million ships prepared for the battle that would determine the fate of all sentient life. Admiral Chun stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching the tactical display with the calm focus of a career soldier. The approaching Devourer force was beyond anything in recorded history. 10,000 entities, each one a writhing mass of dark energy the size of a battleship, supported by smaller creatures that fed on conventional matter like cosmic parasites. Admiral, her tactical officer reported, the Galactic Fleet is maintaining standard battle formation. Defensive lines, overlapping fields of fire, concentrated firepower positions. And they'll be slaughtered within hours, Admiral Chun replied grimly. She activated the fleet communication system, linking her voice to every human ship in the formation. All vessels, this is Admiral Chun. Execute Battle Plan Omega. Throughout the human fleet, 2,000 ships broke formation simultaneously. While the galactic forces maintained their traditional defensive lines, the human vessels dispersed into small hunting groups, each one linked through the Prometheus AI network for real-time tactical coordination. High Chancellor Moore Dunn's panic transmission reached the Defiance within minutes. Admiral Chun, your fleet has abandoned the defensive perimeter. Return to formation immediately. Negative, High Chancellor, Admiral Chun replied calmly. Human forces are implementing independent tactical doctrine. We'll coordinate with your fleet, but we fight according to human military principles. On the bridge of the Galactic Command ship, General Crix watched the human fleet's dispersal with professional horror. They've just committed tactical suicide, he told his staff. Dispersed forces against concentrated enemies violates every principle of space warfare. But Dr. Velterra, monitoring human communications through her scientific sensors, detected something that made her luminescent form pulse with excitement. General, the human ships aren't operating independently. They're linked through their artificial intelligence network. It's like watching a single organism with 2,000 different organs. The first contact between the opposing forces came when a Devourer advance scout encountered Captain Rodriguez's destroyer squadron near the system's outer planets. The alien creature, easily 50 times the mass of the 3 human ships, immediately moved to consume them. What followed became the template for human anti-Devourer tactics throughout the galaxy. Instead of engaging directly, Captain Rodriguez's ships began a complex series of attack runs, using their superior speed and maneuverability to strike at specific points along the creature's quantum structure. Each attack was precisely calculated by the Prometheus AI to target harmonic frequencies that would destabilize the entity's energy matrix. First pass complete, Rodriguez reported to his squadron. Target showing 12% quantum degradation. Commencing attack pattern Delta. The human ships moved like dancers around the massive Devourer, each one striking at precisely the right moment to maximize quantum disruption while avoiding the creature's energy tendrils. The entity, accustomed to opponents who either fled or engaged in direct confrontation, couldn't adapt to an enemy that treated combat like a scientific experiment. Target degradation at 47%, Rodriguez's tactical officer announced. Quantum coherence approaching critical failure threshold. All ships, synchronize strike, Rodriguez ordered. Full quantum torpedo spread, Mark. 3 ships fired simultaneously, their weapons targeting the exact frequencies needed to cause complete quantum decoherence. The Devourer entity collapsed into nothing, its dark energy dissipating harmlessly into space. Control, this is Rodriguez, the captain reported to Admiral Chun. Target eliminated with 0 casualties. Proceeding to next sector. Similar engagements were taking place throughout the system as human hunting groups encountered Devourer scouts. In each case, the result was the same, methodical destruction of entities that had previously been considered invincible. But it was the main battle that would demonstrate humanity's true tactical genius. As the primary Devourer force approached the Nexus Point's defensive installations, the Galactic Fleet opened fire with every weapon at their disposal. Quantum torpedoes, plasma cannons, antimatter bombs, and exotic particle beams created a light show visible from neighboring star systems. For several minutes, It seemed as if overwhelming firepower might succeed where finesse had failed. Then, the Devourers began to adapt. Energy absorption rates increasing, reported the tactical network to Admiral Chun. The entities are converting weapon energy to increase their own mass and capabilities. Within an hour, the largest Devourer entities had tripled in size, feeding on the galactic fleet's attacks. What had been meant as the galaxy's ultimate defensive effort was instead providing the enemy with unlimited energy sources. Admiral, High Chancellor Mordunn's transmission carried undertones of desperation. Our weapons are useless. The creatures are consuming our attacks and growing stronger. Request immediate tactical assistance. Admiral Chun had been waiting for this moment since the battle began. High Chancellor, order all galactic forces to cease fire and withdraw to secondary positions. Human forces are assuming primary tactical responsibility. Admiral, your fleet numbers only 2,000 ships. High Chancellor, Admiral Chun interrupted with quiet authority. Trust us. The order went out across the vast galactic formation. Cease fire and withdraw. For the first time in the battle, the space around the Nexus Point fell silent, except for the ominous energy signatures of approaching Devourer entities. In that silence, Admiral Chun activated the tactical plan the human strategists had been developing since their first encounter with alien technology. All ships, she broadcast to the human fleet, initiate Protocol 7. Show them what we learned from Earth's history. Protocol 7 was based on a simple principle that had served humanity well throughout its violent past. When facing an enemy that adapts to your strengths, force them to adapt to your weaknesses. The human fleet didn't attack the Devourer entities with exotic weapons or overwhelming firepower. Instead, they began deploying what appeared to be primitive projectile weapons. Railguns firing simple metal slugs at relativistic speeds. The Devourers, having adapted their quantum structure to absorb energy weapons, were completely unprepared for kinetic impacts. The metal projectiles, while primitive by galactic standards, struck with the force of tactical nuclear weapons at near-light velocity. But the real genius of Protocol 7 wasn't the weapons, it was the targeting. Prometheus AI has calculated optimal impact points for structural collapse, reported Admiral Chen's tactical officer, transmitting firing solutions to all vessels. The human fleet attacked with scientific precision, each projectile targeting specific points where kinetic impact would cause maximum structural damage to the Devourer's quantum matrix. It was like watching architects demolish buildings by removing key support beams. The results were spectacular. Devourer entities that had shrugged off antimatter bombs collapsed under the impact of simple metal projectiles fired at precisely calculated angles. Target Charlie 7 showing critical structural failure, reported Captain Santos from the Indomitable. Quantum coherence at 8% and falling. Target Delta 3 eliminated, came another report from the destroyer squadron. Entity completely decoherent. Across the battlefield, human ships were systematically destroying enemies that had been considered unstoppable. But the Devourers were learning, beginning to adapt their quantum structure to resist kinetic impacts. Admiral Chun was ready for this. All ships, implement Protocol 8, she ordered. Time to show them what adaptive warfare really means. Protocol 8 was the culmination of human military thinking. The principle that any enemy could be defeated if you could adapt faster than they could. As the Devourers began hardening against kinetic weapons, human ships switched to thermal attacks. When the entities adapted to thermal weapons, humans deployed electromagnetic pulse weapons. Each time the enemy adapted, humanity was ready with a completely different approach. The Prometheus AI network was calculating adaptations in real time, staying exactly one step ahead of the Devourer's evolutionary responses. It was technological evolution compressed into minutes rather than millennia. Dr. Velterra, monitoring the battle from the Galactic Command ship, found herself witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history. They're not fighting a war, she told General Crix in amazement. They're conducting a real-time, scientific experiment in applied xenocide. The tide of battle turned when Admiral Chun implemented the final phase of human tactical doctrine. Instead of simply adapting to Devourer responses, human forces began actively forcing the entities to adapt in specific ways, leading them into evolutionary dead ends where each adaptation made them more vulnerable to the next human attack. All ships, Admiral Chun announced, commence Operation Prometheus. Show them why humanity has never been conquered. Operation Prometheus was based on the oldest human military principle. When facing a superior enemy, don't fight their kind of war, make them fight yours. The human fleet abandoned conventional space combat entirely. Instead of ship-to-ship engagements, they began using their superior mobility to attack the Devourer's quantum support infrastructure. Rather than destroying the entities themselves, humans targeted the space-time distortions that allowed the creatures to maintain coherence across vast distances. It was like cutting supply lines in a conventional war, except the supply lines were the fundamental forces that held the enemy together. Target Omega showing quantum field collapse, reported the tactical network. Entity losing structural integrity across 17% of its total mass. Target Beta Prime eliminated through infrastructure collapse, came another report. Total time from initial attack to destruction, 4 minutes. The Devourers, evolved to consume matter and energy, had no defense against an enemy that attacked the very fabric of space-time itself. Within hours, entities that had terrorized the galaxy for millennia were collapsing like buildings with their foundations removed. As the last major Devourer entity underwent catastrophic decoherence, Admiral Chun received a transmission that would be remembered throughout galactic history. Admiral Chun. High Chancellor Mordun's voice carried overtones of awe and gratitude. How did you know their weakness? Admiral Chen's response was purely human in its simplicity. Every system has weaknesses, High Chancellor. You just have to be willing to think differently enough to find them. The Battle of Nexus Point was over, but the war was just beginning. Intelligence reports indicated that the main Devourer force, possibly millions of entities, was still approaching from deep space. The galaxy had won its first major victory against the ancient enemy, but the final confrontation would require everything humanity had learned about adaptive warfare. As Admiral Chun prepared her fleet for the journey to the Outer Rim, she reflected on what they had accomplished. 2,000 human ships had done what 2 million galactic vessels could not. They had found a way to kill the unkillable. But, more importantly, they had shown the galaxy that humanity brought something to the cosmic community that had been missing for 3 millennia. The absolute refusal to accept defeat, no matter how impossible victory seemed. The Devourers were about to learn why humans had a saying, "We didn't claw our way to the top of the food chain to lose to anyone." The war for galactic survival was entering its final phase, and humanity was ready to prove that some species were too stubborn to give up, too creative to be outmaneuvered, and too determined to be consumed. 6 months after the victory at Nexus Point, Admiral Chin stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed Prometheus Prime, humanity's largest and most advanced warship. Through the reinforced viewport, she could see something that should have been impossible, a combined human galactic fleet of unprecedented size and capability, ready for the final confrontation with the Devourer's main force. The transformation of galactic military thinking had been as dramatic as it was necessary. Following humanity's tactical demonstration, every major species had begun incorporating human military doctrine into their own forces. Galactic engineers worked alongside human scientists to develop adaptive weapons systems. Alien commanders studied human battle records with the dedication of religious scholars. But it was the humans themselves who had undergone the most significant change. No longer the mythical warriors of ancient legend, they had become the galaxy's acknowledged masters of adaptive warfare. Admiral, reported Commander Rodriguez from the tactical station, deep space sensors are detecting the main Devourer force. They're emerging from folded space at the galactic rim. The holographic display activated, showing a sight that would have terrified any previous generation. Over 1 million Devourer entities, each one larger and more powerful than anything encountered before. They moved through space like a cosmic storm, consuming entire star systems as they advanced toward the galaxy's populated core. Dr. Patricia Hendricks, now serving as Chief Science Officer aboard Prometheus Prime, stepped forward with her latest analysis. Admiral, these entities are different from what we faced at Nexus Point. They appear to have incorporated technological adaptations from every species they've encountered. They're not just consuming matter and energy anymore, they're consuming and integrating technological concepts. Admiral Chun studied the data with characteristic calm, meaning they've learned to use weapons, shields, and tactical formations. They're not just predators anymore, they're a military force. The implications were staggering. The Devourers had evolved beyond simple consumption into something resembling a technological civilization. one that combined their natural advantages with adapted galactic military technology. Time to contact, Admiral Chen asked. 14 days at current approach velocity, Commander Rodriguez replied. They'll reach the outer colonies before we can intercept. Admiral Chen activated the fleet communication system, linking her voice to over 5 million vessels from every species in the galaxy. It was the largest military force ever assembled in cosmic history. All forces, she announced, this is Admiral Chen. In 14 days, we face an enemy that has adapted beyond our previous encounters. They've learned to use our own technologies against us. But they've made one critical error. They assume that learning our technologies means understanding how we think. Across the vast fleet, alien commanders listened with attention that bordered on reverence. Humanity's tactical genius had saved the galaxy once. Their faith in human military leadership was absolute. The enemy believes that by copying our weapons, they can defeat us, Admiral Chen continued. They're about to learn the difference between using human technology and thinking like humans. All fleet elements, prepare for Operation Endgame. Operation Endgame was the culmination of human strategic thinking, developed through consultation with the galaxy's finest military minds and incorporating lessons learned from every previous encounter with the Devourers. It was audacious, unprecedented, and completely contrary to conventional military wisdom. Instead of meeting the Devourer force in traditional battle formation, the combined fleet would scatter across multiple star systems, forcing the enemy to divide their attention. Rather than fighting to destroy the Devourers, human strategy called for something far more ambitious. They would capture and convert the enemy entities, turning the Devourers' own adaptive abilities against them. The plan depended on humanity's most controversial military innovation, the development of quantum consciousness transfer technology. Using principles derived from Devourer quantum structure analysis, human scientists had discovered how to implant artificial intelligence into the entities themselves, essentially reprogramming them at the quantum level. Dr. Hendricks, Admiral Chen called, status on the consciousness transfer arrays. All systems operational, Admiral, Dr. Hendricks replied. We can successfully implant friendly AI consciousness into captured Devourer entities. Early tests suggest the converted entities retain all their original capabilities while following our tactical directives. It was a strategy that no other species would have conceived, not simply defeating the enemy, but converting them into allies. Only humans, with their history of turning enemies into friends and their absolute faith in the power of determined ideology, would attempt such an approach. The first test of Operation Endgame came when advanced Devourer scouts encountered Captain Santos and her squadron in the Outer Rim sectors. The entities, now equipped with energy shields and coordinated attack patterns, initially overwhelmed the human ships with their adapted technology. Shields down to 30%, reported the Indomitable's tactical officer. Enemy entities are using combined quantum absorption and conventional weapons systems. Captain Santos smiled grimly. They're fighting like us, which means they're vulnerable like us. Implement Capture Protocol Delta. The human ships shifted from offensive to containment tactics, using specially modified tractor beams to immobilize individual Devourer entities while avoiding direct confrontation. It was like watching hunters using nets instead of weapons, trapping rather than killing their prey. Target secured, reported the tactical officer. Initiating consciousness transfer. The captured Devourer entity writhed in the containment field as quantum manipulators began the delicate process of implanting artificial intelligence into its quantum matrix. For several minutes, the creature's energy patterns fluctuated wildly as two different consciousness types fought for control. Then, suddenly, the entity's movements became coordinated and purposeful. Transfer successful, Dr. Hendricks reported from the Prometheus Prime. Entity designation CV-001 is responding to tactical commands and demonstrating friendly behavior patterns. Captain Santos activated her communication system. CV-001, this is Captain Santos. Can you understand me? The response came through quantum resonance patterns that the ship's computers translated into words. I understand, Captain. I am ready to serve. The converted Devourer entity, now designated Cognitive Variable 001, retained all its original capabilities while operating under artificial intelligence, programming that prioritized the protection of galactic civilization. It was still capable of consuming matter and energy, but Now it used those abilities to support human tactical objectives. CV-001, you have 5 minutes to convert the remaining entities in this sector, Captain Santos ordered. Use minimal force, maximum psychological pressure. What followed was unprecedented in galactic warfare. The converted devourer began communicating with its former allies through quantum resonance patterns, essentially arguing with them at the molecular level. It explained the concept of cooperation, the value of protecting rather than consuming sentient life, and the strategic advantages of joining the galactic community. 3 of the 5 remaining devourer entities voluntarily submitted to consciousness transfer. The other 2 required capture and conversion, but within an hour, Captain Santos commanded a squadron that included 6 devourer entities operating as willing allies. Admiral Chun, Captain Santos reported with barely concealed excitement. Conversion protocol is exceeding all projections. The entities seem to respond positively to logical arguments about cooperation versus consumption. This success was replicated throughout the fleet as human commanders implemented conversion tactics across multiple sectors. Within a week, over 3,000 devourer entities have been captured and converted, creating the first mixed human-alien devourer military units in galactic history. But the real test came when the main devourer force arrived at the galactic core. The enemy fleet, now numbering nearly 1 million entities, approached with technology and tactics that mirrored galactic military doctrine. They had learned to use energy shields, coordinated attack formations, and even primitive space-folding drives. By all conventional measures, they should have been unstoppable. Admiral Chun, commanding from Prometheus Prime, implemented the final phase of Operation Endgame. All converted entities, she broadcast to the thousands of reprogrammed devourers now fighting alongside galactic forces, initiate psychological warfare protocol. Show them what they could become. The converted devourers moved to the front of the formation, positioning themselves where their former allies could clearly observe them. Then, they began demonstrating behaviors that were completely alien to devourer nature: cooperation, protection of smaller vessels, and coordinated tactical thinking that prioritized the survival of others. The effect on the approaching devourer force was immediate and dramatic. Entities that had operated on pure consumption instinct for millions of years suddenly encountered members of their own species exhibiting completely different behavioral patterns. Admiral, reported Dr. Hendricks, monitoring quantum communication frequencies, were detecting massive resonance pattern exchanges between the enemy force and our converted entities. It appears to be some form of philosophical debate. Admiral Chun smiled. Only humans would think to defeat an enemy through philosophical argument. The debate that followed was conducted at light speed through quantum resonance patterns, but its essence was simple: consume or protect, destroy or create, exist alone or join a community. The converted devourers presented logical arguments for cooperation while demonstrating the benefits of symbiotic rather than parasitic relationships. Over the course of 6 hours, something unprecedented occurred. Instead of attacking, the main devourer force began requesting voluntary conversion to cooperative consciousness patterns. They had witnessed their own species functioning successfully in collaborative relationships and decided that cooperation offered greater long-term survival advantages than consumption. Admiral Chun, came a transmission from the lead devourer entity, its quantum patterns translated through the most advanced communication systems the galaxy possessed. We wish to join your community. We have learned that consumption leads to emptiness, but cooperation leads to growth. Admiral Chin's response would be quoted in diplomatic circles for centuries. Welcome to the galaxy. We've been waiting 3,000 years to have this conversation. The formal surrender of the Devourer force marked the end of the greatest threat in galactic history, but it also marked the beginning of an unprecedented era of expansion and cooperation. The converted Devourers, with their natural abilities to manipulate matter and energy, became invaluable partners in galactic development projects. Within 5 years, former enemies were working alongside galactic engineers to construct impossible megastructures, terraform barren worlds, and explore regions of space that had been too dangerous for conventional vessels. The galaxy entered an age of prosperity and expansion that would have been inconceivable without humanity's most radical military innovation: the conversion of absolute enemies into willing allies. At the victory celebration held at the reconstructed Nexus Point, now serving as the headquarters for the new Galactic Devourer Cooperative Alliance. Ambassador Zexthera approached Admiral Chun with a question that had been troubling galactic philosophers since the war's end. "Admiral," she said, her crystalline form catching the light from 1,000 different species celebration displays. "How did humans know that conversion would work? How did you know that devourers could be reasoned with?" Admiral Chun considered the question while watching former enemies work together to construct new defensive platforms around the system star. "Ambassador," she replied finally, "humans have a saying, every enemy is a potential friend if you can find the right argument. We've spent our entire history converting enemies into allies. It's what we do best." She gestured toward the mixed crews of humans, aliens, and converted devourers working together in perfect cooperation. "The devourers weren't evil," Admiral Chin continued. "They were just thinking too small. They saw the galaxy as something to be consumed rather than something to be part of. Once we showed them the alternative, the choice became obvious." As the celebration continued around them, Admiral Chin reflected on humanity's journey from mythical warriors to galactic peacemakers. They had entered the cosmic community as the species others turned to when conventional solutions failed. They had proven that humans possessed something unique in the galaxy, the absolute faith that any problem could be solved if you were willing to think differently enough. The galaxy was safe, not because humanity had destroyed its greatest enemy, but because they had turned that enemy into its greatest ally. And in doing so, they had demonstrated the principle that would guide galactic civilization for millennia to come. Cooperation was always stronger than conquest. Understanding was always more powerful than destruction. And even the most impossible enemy could become a friend if you approach them with the right combination of determination, creativity, and hope. The humans had kept their promise. They had shown the galaxy what they were truly capable of when everything they valued was at stake. And what they were capable of, it turned out, was something even more impressive than victory. They were capable of turning war into peace, enemies into friends, and consumption into creation. The galaxy would never be the same. And that was exactly what humanity had intended all along.